Another fabulous disaster.
And the home of the brave.
Game on!
Welcome to the 7th episode of the Hit the Deck podcast, where we talk deck hockey, street hockey, ball hockey. It's hockey in sneakers. I thank you so very much for joining us once again. And, of course, my co-host thanks you as well. DJ Jimmy Jam James, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing pretty well, Mr. Rhino Max, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. You know what? I'm so eager to introduce myself because I'm such a wild narcissist. Why don't we just go to the starting lineup? And tonight's starting lineup, in goal, I am the American Rhino, number 35, Gary McComiskey, and my illustrious co-host is...
And on defense, number 4, I'm James Sajazi.
Fantastic. And this week you will not be hearing from our frequent contributor, Mike Margiotta. We're giving him the week off this week. And
he's a healthy scratch.
Yeah, a number of weeks going forward, I assume, although we are very happy to have had him on the last 3 podcasts. Thanks, Mike.
Absolutely. I second that.
How you doing, James?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you?
I'm fighting off a little bit of a cold. I feel like I've been sick off and on for basically since New Year's, and it's unfortunate. But what are you going to do? A lot of people are sick this time of year.
Yeah, this weather isn't helping either, where one day it's 60 degrees, the next day it's snowing. So
yeah, so
I feel you with that.
If my voice is a little rough at points during the podcast, you will know why.
All right, but you are a pro, so you're sounding good, so keep it up.
Yeah, why don't you tell us what's on deck for tonight, James?
We'll be happy to. All right, leading off, happy birthday to Megan and a happy belated birthday to Mr. Bobby Orr. Gary's lovely younger sister Megan is not a big hockey fan, but a very happy birthday to her nonetheless. As for Mr. Orr, one of the all-time greatest NHLers ever, he turned 68 on March 20th, and we'll briefly go over his illustrious resume. From there, we'll jump on the bandwagon. This is a new segment to Hit the Deck, cooked up by our own beloved American Rhino, Gary Mack. Gary and I will talk about what everybody else is talking about, but with our HTD point of view. Good Friday, March 25th, 2016, also marks the premiere of the highly anticipated Batman v Superman movie, and Gary and I will do our best Two-Face impressions by adding our 2 cents on our favorite DC superhero, the Batman. And finally, at the movies, The Bad. Another excellent assist goes to the American Rhino Mac on this segue, from the Caped Crusader and Boy Wonder dropping the puck, or dropping the ball as it were on film, to what Gary and I think are Hollywood's other feeble attempts at hockey movies. And that is what's on deck.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. My pleasure.
All right, so let's get this right out of the way, right at the top. As you said, my sister Megan is celebrating a birthday as we record today. Happy 32nd birthday, Sissy. She is not a hockey fan, but she is my sister, so I'm saying happy birthday to her anyway.
And I second that, too. So anybody related to Mr. Gary Mack is worth rooting for and being kind to. So I hope she has a very happy birthday as we're recording this this podcast, I should say.
All right, thank you. And somebody who does have a little something to do with hockey, as you mentioned, Bobby Orr also celebrated a birthday this week.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I mean, last week was a real busy one in the NHL world, and it capped off with the real number 4, as I like to refer to Bobby Orr. My apologies for being a quote-unquote defenseman and wearing that illustrious number. So, again, I'm sorry. But anyway, way back when I went to Severian High School in Brooklyn, religion/theology teacher named Brother Joe Mussa taught the coolest lesson of all time. Brother Joe, who also happened to be a key member of Severian's ice hockey coaching staff, devoted an entire class section to watching Bobby Orr highlights. I believe he was from Boston, Brother Joe.
Okay.
And a huge Bruins fan, and Bobby Orr happened to be his favorite player. So from that point on, just March 20th was ingrained in my brain as a day to celebrate.
You know what? I had a art teacher that showed us Simpsons cartoons, and I had a psych teacher that played Pink Floyd while we took tests. But I never had a teacher that showed us hockey during class. That's pretty awesome.
Wow, that is really cool. Playing Pink Floyd during a test.
Yeah. Well, I think The Wall especially, there's a lot of psychological nonsense going on there. So he was a big fan, and I guess he thought it would put us in the mood.
Wow, man. All right. Hey, thinking outside the box is a good thing as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, again, this was way back when, 20 years ago when I was in high school. And Brother Joe even had to lug a huge TV with a VCR, if anybody knows what that is anymore, on this big clumsy rack from class to class, and he even handed out candy.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, that was a pretty cool lesson that day. But as for Mr. Orr, I mean, the man revolutionized the defensive position and the sport of hockey itself. He only had a brief career. It was only 12 seasons, I should say. He had to retire early because of back problems.
You know what? 12 years is a pretty good run.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially here in New York, another sniper who had to retire pretty early by the name of Mike Bossy. It really puts in perspective just how incredible these players were. But in Bobby Orr's brief, 12 years, sure, nothing to sneeze at. But considering he won 8 straight Norris trophies, that is the top defenseman trophy of the in the league every year. And then he won 3 straight Hart trophies, which is the league's MVP, along with 2 Art Ross trophies, which he is the only defenseman ever to lead the league in scoring twice.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty incredible. Another interesting stat that he is the only one to hold this, as a matter of fact, is he led the league in plus-minus 6 times, and I don't even know if anybody's come close to that. I mean, being that far up plus as a defenseman is really remarkable.
Well, I guess if you're getting scoring titles, you're pretty good in the plus column.
Think so. And finally, 2-time Stanley Cup champion. And I think everybody knows the famous picture of or footage of Mr. Orr flying through the air as he scored the 1970 Stanley Cup winning goal.
They have a statue of that in Boston, don't they?
They do indeed, and I think it's probably one of the coolest statues ever, so pretty amazing.
That is a pretty stacked resume for Mr. Orr there.
Much agreed. So anyway, I hope you had a happy birthday, and just if anybody out there is listening who is a Bobby Orr fan, we admiration of that great player. And again, I apologize as I am a quote-unquote defenseman, but, would never insult the man as saying that, but I try.
You know what, James? Anybody who has the pleasure of having you on defense on their team would beg to differ. Trust me.
That's very kind of you. But I don't mean to insult the man, but it's trying to be in homage of him as well. But anyway, thank you, Mr. Orr, for all that you've done. And he's only 68 too, so not exactly an old man as far as I'm concerned. So
no, in 2016, 68, that's not bad at all.
Yeah. So. That is that. So, if anybody else out there wants to chime in, any memories that you have of Bobby Orr, if you're an older fan or a second generation thereabouts, kind of like we are, since we didn't have a chance to see him play live. But, definitely give us an email or whatever at hitthedeck@gmail.com, and we'd love to hear from you.
Very nice. So, moving on, James.
Yes, sir.
We are jumping on the bandwagon, as you said in the On Deck segment, and I have a very important question for you.
And what would that be?
Do you bleed?
As a matter of fact, I do.
Yeah, actually, I've seen you slide across the concrete to block a shot, so yeah, I know you do, in fact, bleed.
Yeah, very well done. Listen, I like we said, at the recording of this podcast, Batman v Superman is coming out. So as of the recording of this podcast, there have been some reviews trickling out about the movie. I've heard both good and bad. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I'll be able to go see it this weekend, it being Easter and all. But
it releases as this podcast releases on Friday. It opens today. So yeah. It, as you said, Easter weekend, and it is highly anticipated. So even if you did have an opportunity to, you might not be able to get a ticket. But Yeah, so as you said, good and bad reviews. It's based, I believe, in large part on the classic Frank Miller graphic novel, The Dark Knight Returns, where Batman is basically a cranky old man and decides that the world has gone soft and gotten kind of lawless and needs Batman again. So he decides to come out of retirement and he has to bludgeon everybody in his path into submission, including Superman. So, we'll see what happens. They basically gave away the movie in the trailer, so that's a little disappointing that there probably won't be that many surprises, but I will still watch it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And just anybody out there listening, Gary didn't mean to scare you or whatever. That's what the reference was for Do You Bleed? In case somebody out there hasn't seen the trailer or something, that was an excellent rendition of Mr. Batman by Mr. Gary Max Part. So.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I'd say it's excellent, but yeah, that's in the trailer. Batman asks Superman if he bleeds. Over
we are
the bat
talking
signal
about, yeah,
for some reason.
right. We are talking about Ben Affleck, so I think you're a much better actor than he, but that's my personal opinion. But
he's a lot wealthier than I am, so it evens out.
I don't know if he deserves that, but whatever. Anyway,
as
you may have figured out there that Gary and I are also huge Batman fans, and unintentionally we sprinkle that fact in our Hit the Deck podcasts now and again. So we'll officially go into the connections between The Dark Knight and hockey in this podcast. So definitely hang in there with that.
Yeah, so in Batman's various incarnations through comic books, TV, movies, I think it's grown to be more of a more recent thing, but definitely it's going to take center stage in this movie is the way Batman kind of attires himself, the bat suit. It's gone from being like spandex to being basically really high-tech body armor. And as a goalie, I appreciate that kind of protection. I think Batman would probably make for a pretty good goalie because it looks lightweight. I would imagine it has to be lightweight for him to be able to be that agile and fight all those bad guys and what have you, and jump from rooftops and swing on grapples and etc. But it also has great protection. So I think, speaking as a goalie, to have that kind of agility would help me stop the puck a little easier, although you lose space, like square inches of space, just blocking the puck because you don't have that kind of the pads taking up extra space on either side of your leg, and you're a little bulkier, which takes up more space in the net. So I guess it's a trade-off. But you know what? Come to think of it, Batman probably has better things to do than play goalie anyway. So
well, it's natural. I mean, if he's going to save Gotham City and the world, you might as well save a few shots with your buddies, and get in goal there. Batman, come on.
I do actually have a Batman logo, specifically the Batman Beyond logo, on my mask. So I guess I have a little bit of Batman in me as a goalie.
That's right. One of the coolest masks ever out there. When you get a chance, if you don't mind putting it up on our Instagram account too, I'm sure people would like to check it out.
Who are you? I'm the American Rhino. Doesn't quite roll off the tongue the same way as Michael Keaton said it, but
I scared the pants off of me. I don't know about anybody else out there, but I need to take a time out right now.
Although there is a more direct connection between Batman and hockey, and it's not the proudest moment of the franchise, but anybody who has any real history with the Batman movies, I'm not talking about the Nolan-verse, I'm talking about the Batman movies from the 90s.
Right.
Anyone who has any experience with that knows where we're going with this. I'll give you a hint. The Iceman cometh. That's right. We are talking about Batman and Robin, specifically the scene where, for no apparent reason, they're in a museum that gets completely iced over, and they pop hockey skates out of their boots and have a hockey game, basically an impromptu hockey game with Mr. Freeze's goons.
Which I did see the movie when it came out. This was way back in 1997.
As did I.
Yeah, so I don't think I've seen it since. But if memory serves, they just somehow had hockey sticks too, right? I remember the skates coming out from the boots, but...
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen it either, honestly, since it came out. because it was so unwatchably bad.
Yeah. So, in case anybody doesn't know what we're talking about, like Gary said, Mr. Freeze has a bunch of goons, and despite having too many men on the ice, his goon squad, Batman and Robin, were shorthanded, and they tried to save a huge diamond from Mr. Freeze's clutches. I think the diamond had something to do with powering Mr. Freeze's suit.
Yes, I think you're right.
Yeah, and then, like Gary said, an impromptu hockey game just broke out.
I have to assume the diamond was the puck, but it was
Yes, it was. Yes, that's right.
I also remember there being a dinosaur and someone sliding down it shouting "Yabba Dabba Doo."
I didn't remember the Yabba Dabba Doo part, but that would have been cool. And I am envious of Mr. Freeze because, as Gary and I have said, in being in our part of the world, that we don't have the opportunity to skate on ice very much, with the exception of a couple of ice hockey rinks that there are in the New York, Connecticut, New Jersey tri-state area. But that would be awesome if you just want to get some ice hockey going. You just take your gun out and shoot out some area and you have the boots that have skates in them, and away you go.
All right, yeah. So cons to being Mr. Freeze. Your wife is terminally ill and permanently frozen. You've suffered a horrible accident which causes your flesh to basically disintegrate at anything above freezing, which forces you to live your life in a suit, basically a walking cryogenic tube, and you've lost any capability for empathy or emotion. But on the plus side, instant hockey game anytime you want. So, I guess silver linings.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
All right. I don't know. All right, so that was, I think, inarguably an awful movie.
Yeah, we're not even going to go into the rest of it, but I think Gary was brilliant just to bring out that one particular scene to sum it all up.
Right. Well, it's the scene that has the most to do with hockey, and
right.
Unfortunately, that's not the only bad hockey movie or hockey-related movie that's been made. There have been a number of them. Now, James, you have some strong feelings about the Mighty Ducks franchise, do you not?
I do, and just to explain myself, at the time when those movies came out, I wasn't much of a Disney fan, and I just couldn't stand the name. I thought Mighty Ducks was just so dumb in my teenage brain, and I kind of figured that it would just be a predictable, corny movie, and then they ended up having 3 of them, I believe, out of the franchise. So
at least, yeah. I only know of 3 of them, but that doesn't mean there weren't more direct-to-video. So,
like I said, at the time, I was a bit more cynical and a non-believer in the Mighty Ducks franchise. So, not looking to offend anybody out there, just saying that's how it was. And my apologies for people that love the movie. And if it did do its purpose of promoting the sport of hockey, especially with the Ducks actually joining the NHL.
I was going to say, it spawned 3 movies, a cartoon, and an actual NHL franchise. So, not so bad for itself.
No, not at all. So mission accomplished, and I tip my cap on that aspect.
James. I respect what you're saying. I respect your feelings about the Mighty Ducks, but I think you're forgetting one very important fact.
What's that?
Ducks fly together, James.
I see.
Quack. 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 You haven't seen the movie, so this is all flying right over your head.
Literally, yeah.
Hi-oh!
Don't drop anything on my head, please. Just have a big old target right there going, but yeah.
So, the reason it's on our bad movie list, listen, I have fond memories as a child of watching the Mighty Ducks and D2, the Mighty Ducks. I think that's what it was called.
It was, yes.
Yes. And, Emilio Estevez going from being a drunk guy who regrets his past that he never really made good on, and woulda, coulda, shoulda, and brings together a ragtag group of street urchins to play hockey and win the big game. And then in D2, when they go to basically the kids version of the Olympics, I don't remember what it was called, basically like the World Juniors or something, and they make it to the finals, but they can't overcome until finally in the third period they take off their USA jerseys and they put on their Mighty Ducks jerseys and they come together and they win the game. I know James is horrified. As a Patriot, I'm a little appalled too, but
yes,
you have to understand the moment in the movie was very touching.
Okay. But yeah, and just for the record, I'm going on the record as saying I'm anti-Mighty Ducks. So devote all your anger towards me. I don't want Gary taking the fall for that one.
No, that's fine. But I don't know if I have ever seen D3, which was the third movie. I remember very well the first two, but I think by the time that came out, either it was direct to video or I had outgrown the franchise by that point, or more likely both. But it happened to be on TV a few weeks ago, and I caught a little bit of it. It was fairly early in the movie. Apparently the premise of that film is that they've gotten scholarships to some prestigious prep school. So the Ducks are basically the hockey team for that school, and they have a coach who doesn't care about their Duck history and only wants them to play rigidly a certain way. And they all, I don't know, I really didn't watch more than 20 minutes of the movie. But in the 20 minutes of the movie that I watched, they had their first hockey game as a team. And that's why this movie is on this list of bad hockey movies. James, I tell you, the depiction of hockey in this movie was appalling. I mean, I get it. It's a movie, and it's a movie that's supposed to appeal to kids. So there is going to be a certain amount of pratfalls and a certain amount of silly, improbable things that happen. But honestly, I could not enjoy it even as a movie, because as somebody who watches hockey regularly, I just sat back saying, that's a trip. That's a trip. That's a hook. There was one play that was a trip that was called a hook for some reason, which, minor thing, but these ticky-tack things annoy me. That wouldn't happen. That wouldn't happen. That's not legal. That defies physics. That's ridiculous. I sat there and I said, I was with my family at the time. I turned to them and I said, I know this movie is made for kids, but even a child has to look at this and say that's patently ridiculous, right? I know I'm nitpicking, but it bothers me when these things are so wildly ridiculous, and they depict hockey. So not just hockey, any sport. You watch a sports movie and they do something patently stupid, but I don't know. It's just, it bothers me, and maybe that's a little bugaboo of my own. But there you have.
I'm going to back you up on that, especially like we said that it was backed by Disney and they were in cahoots with the NHL, obviously, so they were trying to promote the sport and they launched a franchise, a pretty darn good franchise at that.
Sure.
From it, but yeah, when you're, especially if you're geared towards children, and then they expect to watch an NHL game and see ridiculous things happen, and then it's just a strict game where there's offsides and there's penalties and periods and whatever, maybe they would get disappointed, whereas the real game, which is a beautiful game and a great game, might appear boring to them because it wasn't the Hollywood crazy ridiculous nonsense that went on. So that could be a double-edged sword. That's all I'm saying.
There was one point during this game in the movie where somebody took a slap shot, and not the goalie, the defenseman standing in front of the net tried to glove it with his glove, his hand, and the shot hit with such force that he caught it in his hand, but it caused him to spin around and around and around and pirouette until finally he inadvertently threw it into the net.
Okay, that sums it up for me. That's a trashy movie. Just don't watch that. Oh my gosh.
I haven't seen the end. I don't know how the big final climactic game goes, because there must be one.
How do you top that? I mean,
I don't know. It was no miracle. But
Right.
yeah, so after 2, the Ducks team that was not the Ducks were up 9-0, and they wound up tying 9-9 after 3.
Oh, for goodness sake.
Because as the coach says, you have to play defense. I don't care how many goals you score, but I want to have a shutout. You have to play defense at all times.
Okay. Good advice there, Guy.
I'm sure there's somebody, maybe even somebody listening to this very podcast that has fond, warm memories of that movie. In fact, I know in my wife's family that there is kind of a running joke, something that there's a player in the movie franchise named Conway, and he's apparently he's a forward by trade, but the coach has inexplicably decided to make him a defenseman, and so he's kind of teaching him how to play defense, and he calls out to him at one point, "Make him make a move, Conway." So that's become a running joke in the family, but. The reason I bring that up is I'm sure there are some people, possibly even people listening to this very podcast, for whom this movie is beloved, and for whom the things that me specifically, are saying are sacrilege of the highest order. If you feel that way, contact us at hitthedeck@gmail.com and let us know how wrong you are, how wrong we are. You don't have to let us know how wrong you are.
Actually,
if you like the movie, we already know. But, ooh, burn!
Nicely done.
That was a puck hitting my mask. Sound effect doesn't really carry over.
Yeah. So for my for me, besides the Mighty Ducks franchise, there was a movie called Slapshot 2, which went straight to video, and apparently there's even a Slapshot 3. I'm sure every hockey fan out there, especially our age, hopefully younger too, knows the great movie Slapshot, which came out in 1977, and we'll talk about that in another podcast. But for some reason or another, and I think it was maybe on the heels of the Mighty Ducks franchise, as a matter of fact, I think it was like maybe mid-'90s, late '90s, that they decided to do a sequel to Slapshot, which was really not necessary, and it went straight to video. So the only reason why I know about it is that at the time my brother worked for Columbia House, which was a company that before Amazon and everything like that, they dealt with CDs and videotapes and things, and you would subscribe to it, and it was like a magazine or a subscription, except you would just get new videos or CDs and things like that, and collections and whatnot. Right.
They sent out a catalog, and you could send away for however many. I think like the first time you sent out, it was like a 10 cents a CD or something, and then subsequently they charge you full price. I don't exactly remember how it worked, but I think it was something along those lines.
Yeah. So inevitably, working for the company, my brother would get his hands on some leftovers or things that maybe they wanted to forget.
Ooh,
so as a goof,
leavings.
Yeah, as a goof, he brought, because we're big hockey fans, he brought home Slapshot 2, which neither one of us knew existed. So it was a VHS, and we tried watching it.
I'm sorry, it was a what?
A videotape. If you're such
a video.
Yeah, it was a predecessor,
like Scotch tape.
I guess. I mean, it was dark
tape?
And yeah, it kind of had the consistency of Scotch tape, and it was in a big plastic container with a couple of rolls, and you'd put it in something called a VCR, and
the heck you say?
Yeah, and it was really quite crude, but it's what we knew and what we loved, and we enjoyed it. So anyway, we watched that tape, and again, I don't know how long we lasted either. We even fast forwarded and whatever, but it was unwatchable. So that goes on the list as one of the worst hockey movies ever. I didn't even know about 3 until this afternoon. So
anything stand out particularly bad about Slapshot 2?
I'm trying to remember the plot, because in the original Slapshot, they tied up everything just nicely. There was, again, everything came to a conclusion. We knew what was going to happen from the future, and it was all well and good. Then with the straight to tape version, somehow the franchise came back, and I think they were back in Charlestown, or I don't know. The only thing was the Hanson brothers were back, and the real Hanson brothers, not those wusses that played lousy music in the early 2000s or whatnot. Yeah, right.
That was them, right? I actually know very little about the Hanson brothers.
Right, but the real Hanson brothers, the hockey players, numbers 16, 17, and 18, I believe, for the Chiefs. But
you don't say, eh?
Yeah, they were. I can't even recall the hockey scenes or whatever. It was bad.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah. So my honorable mention, though, in terms of bad hockey movies,
yes,
is a movie called MVP Most Valuable Primate. Yeah.
I remember that. He was like, I remember the cover of that movie. Like, he was in a hockey uniform with the helmet, and he like a stick, and he had like he was blowing a big bubblegum bubble, right? Big pink.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yes.
I remember pointless minutia.
Hey, it helps out here.
Yeah.
So, all right, I love hockey, and I think chimpanzees are extremely entertaining when they're in the Hollywood scene and not attacking people. So logically, you figure a hockey-playing chimp would be the best hockey movie ever, as far as I'm concerned. Unfortunately, I've yet to see the movie, and it came out about 16 years ago. So I've seen a couple of clips, and they look kind of funny. I mean, a hockey-playing chimp. I mean, how is that? That's comedy gold, right?
Yeah, so, it's like Schrodinger's cat or whatever. You can. Until you see it, it's simultaneously the best and the worst movie of all time. So as long as you don't watch it, it's still partly incredible.
Yeah, so anybody out there that has seen it, please let me know, and I'll definitely do a YouTube search for it. But in terms of what Gary was saying before about the Mighty Ducks 3, a hockey-playing chimp is just really, it's unbelievable. Maybe I'm just jealous, too, that he was a much better hockey player than I ever will be, so... I'll just throw that out there. and that's it. That's it for me for Hollywood really being going into the penalty box in terms of horrible hockey movies.
Yeah, well, if you have a particularly bad hockey movie that you'd like to pass on to us that we missed, please, by all means, let us know on hitthedeck@gmail.com or on Twitter at hitthedeckpod, or even swing by our Facebook page at hitthedeck on Facebook. And we would love to talk about it. And by the same token, I guess we'll give you a little preview of next week. Next week, we're going to be talking about good hockey movies. So if you have a good hockey movie that you want to make sure we talk about next week, hit us up at Hit the Deck.
Nicely done, Gary. Yeah, definitely. So we'd love to hear from you, and if you would love to participate in the show, you're more than welcome to do so. So thank you very much for listening. Mm-hmm. And we'd like to get a few more opinions out there.
Besides our own. In the podcast.
Okay, fantastic. So that kind of flew. All right, well, thank you again for listening. As always, we appreciate it very, very much. We would like to thank Anthony Sajasi for music that we use in the podcast. We'd like to thank the LIQ for their love and their sounds that they've also contributed. Pops for being the voice of the podcast. Please, you, the listener, hit us up, as we just mentioned. Hitthedeck@gmail.com, at hitthedeckpod on Twitter, at hitthedeck on Facebook and Instagram. And before I forget, we mentioned the Rose Charities Tournament a couple weeks ago. That is now live, so check out our Facebook page, and there will be a link there where you can go to find out more details. James, any parting thoughts?
Just thanks for listening out there, and if you listened to this podcast before, I hope you have a very happy Easter weekend, and if you listen to the podcast after, I hope you had a very happy Easter weekend.
Unless you're Greek, in which case, have a happy eventual Easter.
That's right, yeah, I think it's like a month after the Christian kind.
I think it varies. Some weeks some years it's a week after. Sometimes it's a month after. It's I don't know. Anyway,
you picked me up again, as you always do. Thank you, sir.
All right,
bye, everybody.
I'm gonna end this on a high note. Finally, please remember, it's deck hockey. Don't be that guy. Thanks, everybody. I probably should be drinking heavily.